Hello and welcome to the Epic Photography Podcast. I'm Cathy Baitson, or Cathy Weatherston, whatever you want to call me. My co-hosts are Stephanie Richer from Tennessee, USA, and Peter Treadway from the UK. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Grand, not a bother.
Jazz hands.
So today we are talking about weddings and how we got started. So, will I go first and just get the ball rolling, huh?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, yeah.
Why not?
Okay.
Let's do it.
Now, I'm not going to mention names, so I'll just say the bride and groom and carry from there. So basically, a friend of mine was going to a wedding, and she had said to me about the bride wanted a photographer at the wedding, but the groom didn't. And he was adamant, no photographer. I hate getting my picture taken. I'm not posing for anybody. And that. So the bride obviously was quite, upset about this. And she was like, I really want one. So how are we going to work this out? So my friend turned around and she goes to me, look, I have a friend who's a photographer. She doesn't normally do weddings, like, cause, she works for the newspaper. She does, other stuff. But I'd done school photos and everything at the time. So she turns out, she goes, why don't I ask her to be my guest? And then she just happens to have a good camera. So anyway, as they say, right? So she said, do you think we get away with it? And so she invited me up to her house to talk to the bride. And I says, yeah, absolutely. I'll just play dumb. And I'm just there as my friend's plus one. So we said, right. So the day of the wedding, I walked into the room where the groom was getting married. So my friend was like, come on, we'll just go in and I'll go in and say hi. And I'll just say, oh, this is my friend. And, this is Cathy. So she's with me for the day. So he's just looking around. He's, now he did ask my friend, would she take some pictures? Like, cause they knew her, you know what I mean? So, but she's not a photographer, but she said at the time, oh yeah. So she says, I just thought I'd come in and take a few photographs. So Cathy's with me here. So she has her camera too. So, and he's just looking at me and I'm like, oh geez, don't mind me. I says, you just carry on doing whatever you're doing and I'll try and get little bits and pieces. So as we did that, and his son was there. So I gave the son the flower and I moved a chair in front of the father and the groom. And I said, you stand up there and just get your dad to put the flower on your jacket or your top there. So he goes, okay. So he stands up. So I'm over the back of the dad, kind of photographing over his shoulder. Now, I hadn't photographed him at all. Well, I kind of did in mirrors and stuff. You know the way you do that, like secretly, so no one knows you're photographing them.
The stalker pose.
Yeah. So
I was
anyway,
say, Cathy, that's a felony in at least 7 states. But go on.
Anyway, so the kid is up in the thing. So he's pulling faces at me and sticking his tongue out. And the dad is there. Don't be doing that, just smile. And I'm saying, don't mind him. I says, give me all the faces you want. Pull your face, stick your tongue out. Don't mind your dad, So he start laughing, the kids start laughing. And then, of course, I got, laughing shots. So anyway, moving on, the groom said, oh, come on, we all get a, photograph together. And if the kids jumping up and down on the bed behind them. So it came to the ceremony. So going to the ceremony, I took a seat kind of in the front. So I'm jumping up to photograph all the best bits, and I'm getting up and sitting down like a yo-yo on the chair, up and down. And you can see him just keep looking at me as if to say, what's she doing, So anyway, then I had it planned, right? Because what happened was this hotel is in the middle of kind of like an industrial estate. So there's nowhere to photograph apart from one wall out the side that had a bit of hedging in it. So anyway, I was kind of in my head saying, oh, look, I could just get family shots there and maybe convince them to go. So with the package was the Sensory Gardens down the road. Beautiful location. But that came with the package. And the girl wasn't going to book it. The bride wasn't going to book it because she figured there's no way he's going to go down. I said, book it anyway. If you don't go down, it's saved for an hour. Just book it. Mm-hmm. So I put a case of beer in the boot. Right, as you do. Because,
as you do.
Yeah, as I do.
Right.
So I put a case of beer
Daily.
in the boot. So we came downstairs and we went outside. I says, oh, you come here. I says, you might as well get a couple of shots with your family. And he's like, are you a photographer? And I went, no, I'm just a friend of Maureen's.
I'm the beer lady.
I just got this camera.
Exactly,
yeah. It's great, yeah. So anyway, he says, yeah, I suppose I better. I says, just a quick one or two with the mum and, the mum and dad and the granny and whatever, He says, all right. And then I pulled him aside and I says, you know what? I says, I have a case of beer in my boot. I said, what about popping down the road to the Sensory Gardens? Just half an hour. Just me, you, I said, your wife
beer.
now, and my friend, yeah. I says, we just get in the car, and I opened the boot. I says, look what I've got inside. There's the, and he goes, I said, half an hour, that's it. He goes, okay. So we went down.
And a boot full of beer to an Irishman is like manna from heaven, obviously.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, now, the beers were the props as well.
Of course. But that wasn't what got him there.
Oh, God,
Oh,
no.
my God.
No. It's my total charm, like, but anyway.
Of course.
As you said before, Peter, I can get anyone to do anything. So
Absolutely.
So anyway,
He wasn't driving, was he? He wasn't driving,
I
was
was
he?
doing the driving.
Oh, good.
I was doing the driving. So anyway, so we got down there, and he's like, so which way do you want me to stand? I says, just do whatever you want. I says, just stand the way you'd normally stand. I says, I don't know, So, but what I did was I posed the bride around him at the start. Okay. So there was kind of like a circle with water, and I just had him stand there, kind of leaning against it. He was just... So I posed her around him. But there was so much there. Like there was, there was all sorts. There was like a big shears on the wall, and he stuck his leg over and he goes, oh, after this now I'm getting the snip, stuff like that. So he was just joking, and he was literally having the crack. Like, oh, CRAIC, by the way, in Ireland, that's not. Just for...
Just for our international readers.
Yeah,
that's right. Especially since crack has a different meaning in the United States. He was getting the crack might be interpreted to mean something along the wedding night.
Yeah, but
and
in Ireland,
the UK, Stephanie, and the UK.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's CRAIC. Basically, he was having so much fun. So anyway, so next of all, we were in there for an hour. And he was like, God, that was a quick hour. And he was jumping up and down on different things, and he was running through a boat, and he was doing all sorts. So anyway, so we got back to the hotel, and it was dinner time. So I stayed in my table during the speeches. I didn't move. I stayed exactly where I was, but I used my Zoom lens. And he had given a bunch of flowers to his grandmother. And the grandmother wasn't staying for the rest of the night. She was leaving after the meal. So anyway, after the meal, he came over to me and he says, are you a photographer? And I went, okay, hands up. I am. It says... There's no way on earth, I said, you'd have got a photographer in here. I said, I had to do something. And he turns around and he just starts laughing. And he says, do you know what? He says, I wish I knew that before the meal. He says, because I'd have gotten you to take a photograph with my grandmother before she went up and I gave her the flowers. And I went, it's okay, I already did. And he goes, you did? I said, yep. So anyway, so then for the rest of the night, he was like, here's my aunt. Get a picture of me and my aunt. Get a picture of my mates. Get a picture here. And from that wedding, there was somebody went to that wedding and booked me from that wedding. And it kind of went on from there. So every wedding I done, I got people from that wedding and they told their friends. And that's how it started. I wasn't planning, but I had that much fun. Like literally. Now, it was hard. When you're doing it on your own at the start, it's very hard. You need an assistant or a second shooter like yourselves, because obviously I work with both of you work with me. So you know yourself how much better that is when you have somebody with you. Like it just makes it so much easier. So anyway, so that's my story. I hope I didn't go on for too long there. So
no, that's all good. But let me just ask you, how many weddings since? Because in my experience, and I don't know if it's different in the UK from Ireland and the States. In my experience over here, 9 times out of 10, the grooms will not want to have photos taken. And you do, like you say, Cathy, you have to get creative with them, and you really have to put them at ease first before they'll kind of really start to trust you and let you take those kind of silly pictures before they'll let themselves be silly. How often, like Stephanie, for instance, how often does that happen in the States for you?
Oh, all the time. I can remember a wedding I did where it was, do you have the expression a May-December wedding? That's when the groom is, let's say, significantly older than the bride. And okay. it was an outdoor wedding. It was about 95 degrees because it was in August in the South, which is just miserable. And I remember I took him out for pictures, and the first picture I snapped, he looked at me and he said, "So we're done, right?" And I just smiled and said, "Well, it depends. Do you want to stay married?" Because it's just not going to happen.
That was a good reply.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
But one of the things I like to do, Peter, is I like to take the groom even before the wedding and tell him, you know what? you're going to be the co-star of the day because everybody's looking at the chick in the white dress. That's just how it is. Okay. But I tell them, I want you and your guys to have some special pictures. So I don't care how corny it is, as long as it's not obscene, right? I don't care how stupid it is. We're going to make sure that we take the time out to get you pictures that you wanted. So I've had grooms posing with their fly fishing by the river and stuff like that.
Okay.
I had grooms posing where they're pulling open their shirts to show their superhero shirts underneath. But the point is, I made sure he understood I consider your pictures to be important too. And we're going to make the time to get those. And once I do that, that makes him really happy. And he's like ready to tell his groomsmen, come on, guys, we got to get this done. Let's get it done. Let's get it done.
Yeah, no, I have to say
it's interesting. Oh, sorry, go on, Cathy.
No, go on. I was going to say, like, I just find years ago it was a lot harder because, a lot of people, especially the guys, they just hated being photographed. But I just find now, with all the social media and the Instagram and the TikToks and the selfies, that they're not as bad now as what they used to be. They used to be dreadful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I did
Gen Z and millennials coming up. Yeah. But it's interesting what Stephanie says about the pictures, taking the pictures of the guys doing fly fishing, and I presume you got them doing that because that was a particular hobby of the groom, perhaps.
Right.
And it's quite interesting that I remember on a number of occasions, the first time that it really clicked for me, again, shooting a wedding where the groom just really wasn't into it. I had him in the hotel room, really beautiful hotel room that they were going to be spending the night in. And I tried to get him doing a few poses, and he was just a bit rigid and a little bit stiff, and you could tell that he wasn't really into it. And just something I caught one of his groomsmen said to him, something about football. And I just said to him, and I'm not a football fan in the slightest. And this was just a lucky coincidence. But I said to him, what team do you support? And I think it was Liverpool. And it just so happened that morning, on the way to the wedding, listening to the radio, and I heard that Liverpool had beaten Tottenham, I think it was, the day before. And it was a mega result. It was something like 6-1 or something. And I said to him, did you manage to catch the game last night? And he just switched. He came alive. And he was like, can you believe it, like this goal? And again, I hadn't watched the match. I knew barely anything about football. I knew enough to sort of have a one-sided conversation where someone else was doing most of the talking. But he just completely came alive. And then the groomsmen came in and they started having a chat with him. And I got so many over-animated shots from them, just simply from asking, did you see the game last night? So it's such a huge thing to find something that's relatable for them, and that can really bring them out of themselves. Because as I say, he had no interest in these photos beforehand, but as soon as I got him talking about something he was interested in, it was almost like he forgot about the posing and he just moved so naturally. So I think it's really important, as you say with the fly fishing thing, it's really important to find something that they can relate to kind of put them at ease, and just make them feel much more relaxed.
Yeah, so that's all. I think I know more about football than you do, Peter.
That wouldn't surprise me. So Stephanie, how did you get into wedding photography then?
Well, as you both know, but our dear readers may not know, prior to coming to East Tennessee back in 2011, I lived in Southern California. And there I did fun, lighthearted work. I was a divorce attorney. So coming to Tennessee, I decided, I've always been an avid hobbyist in photography. And when I came here, I found out that the University of Tennessee had a non-credit extension course certificate program in photography. And I said, that sounds good. I'm going to go take some classes. And during the course of that, I was introduced to another established photographer, a fellow by the name of Brian Allen. Everybody calls him B.A. Really nice guy, super guy, still a friend. And at the time, he was doing weddings, and he was looking for interns. And I said, I talked to him. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll intern with you for a year, free. And after a year, if you like my work, you can start paying me. And that's what happened. So I started when I first started doing weddings, I wasn't even the second shooter. I was like the third or fourth shooter. But more importantly, I got the opportunity without any stress, right? Because he said, if you don't get any pictures, don't worry about it. I got the opportunity to see how a wedding is shot, the type of pictures that you have to get, the type of people management. We're talking about grooms and tuning into them, timeline management. I basically learned the the methodology of shooting a wedding, such that I can honestly say the day I shot my first wedding as the primary photographer with a second working for me, I woke up that morning and I was slightly nervous, but I certainly wasn't afraid. So it was through that I, being an intern, and that's something I tell people all the time. In fact, nowadays, I even put it in my contract that my second photographer will always be a very talented and experienced wedding photographer. And it just so happens I know two of them.
Who are they?
I don't know.
For our readers, both Cathy and Peter have acted as my second at some of my weddings. But I put in my contract. Go on, Peter.
So I was going to say, and we have a great time as well. It's when the three of us get together. It's just an absolute riot. It's so much fun. Shooting a wedding is fun anyway, but when you get to do it with your friends, it's it's even better.
Doesn't feel like work, does it?
No, absolutely. You have to pinch yourself and think, I'm getting paid for this. I'm getting paid to do
it's
this.
the editing afterwards you get through. They're like, oh, here we go.
Well, this is true.
This is work.
But one of the things I try to remember that, and in my own contract, I will also say that I reserve the right to bring any other people, somebody who I might be mentoring, somebody who might be interning, or even somebody, and I've done this before, where they just say, Stephanie, I think I might want to do weddings. And I'll say, well, why don't you just come along? No pressure. If you want to take some pictures, that's fine. But just if you follow me and shadow me to learn, to see whether this is something you really liked, you really want to do. And the only thing I say to the couple is I warranty that that person will act in a professional manner in front of their guests and themselves. Okay, so it's not like I'm bringing a teenager along. And I thought that was the best way of learning how to get started in weddings. And from there, I think it's the same thing along with Cathy. You do one wedding, and they talk to somebody, or I can't tell you how many times during a wedding I'll have guests pull me aside and go, "Man, you're such a good photographer." And I'll say, "You haven't even seen the pictures."
Seen the photos.
Oh my God, that happens all the time.
Right.
At the end of, we do weddings, especially myself and Peter, like, God, you guys were brilliant. This is going to be amazing. And I'm like, you haven't seen them yet.
Right, but what they say, though, is they say, we see you hustling. Yeah. We see you putting yourself out. You've been shooting nonstop. You've got things organized. Doesn't matter what the day is throwing at you, you can handle it. And that's that type of impression that has somebody says, "Hey, can I have your card?" Yeah. And that's where you get the next one.
I think that comes back to something that I can't remember what episode it was and what we were talking about, but I remember saying a couple of episodes ago that people buy into people. And the example I gave was that Dave and I, when we were shooting weddings together, we'd go for consultations with couples. And they'd obviously be interviewing other photographers, and we'd get a call back a couple of days, a week later. And a lot of the time they would say to us, "You're not actually the cheapest." We were looking at budget. We were budgeting for a photographer, and obviously they're going to try and go for the cheapest that they can get. And they said, that you weren't the cheapest, but actually we really liked you guys. We really liked the way you vibed off of each other. And it's exactly the same, as you say. If people can see you hustling at a wedding, and they can see the way you're talking to people and the patter that you've got and your personality, they almost don't need to see the photos. They're buying into you as an entity, as a person. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. So Peter,
and also you're. Well, I was just going to say I'm going to lead into how Dave and I got into weddings. It's interesting what Stephanie was saying about her education and going in as like a third or fourth photographer, and that is really invaluable. Dave and I did it completely the opposite way. So Dave and I were just massively into photography. Whatever genre, whatever it was, we had a camera, we had a lens. We lived close to London, and any opportunity we got, we'd go down into London to usually along the River Thames. And along the south bank of the Thames, there's always something going on. There's always, you can find a sea of humanity there. And so we'd go and we'd shoot people, candid photo, street photography. We'd shoot architecture. We'd shoot automotive. We'd cityscapes, seascapes, everything. And then when we filled up our memory cards, we'd go and we'd sit down and we'd take all the images off onto our laptops, and we'd edit a few. And then by that point, the sun had gone down, so we'd go back out and we'd try a little bit with flash, and we'd do light trails with the cars. And so as we were going out more and more, we realised that we loved photography. But as you guys know, and as I'm sure our lovely readers know as well, photography is not a cheap hobby. And so if you want to... if you,
the devil you say.
Yeah, I've said it. I've said before. You don't need. And I actually wrote a blog many years ago now for Scott Kelby's blog about not needing to spend a hell of a load of money to get into photography and take the kind of shots that you want to take. But of course, as you go on, you want to buy new gear. You want to buy new lenses. You want to buy that nice fast aperture, 50mm 1.8, 1.4 lens. And so Dave and I were constantly thinking, right, how can we make money? How can we make money? And it sounds awful, but we got into wedding photography for the money. Now, I'll preface saying that I don't do the wedding photography for the money now. Don't get me wrong, the money is very nice, but I absolutely love shooting weddings. But that wasn't the reason that we got into it. It was purely because at the time, weddings were the way to make the most money. And it sounds shallow, and I understand that. I fully appreciate that. But I have grown to love weddings now, and I just love the whole splendour of the day. But we decided weddings are the way we're going to go. So we started looking around, and we were thinking, well, how are we going to do this? And actually, the opportunity presented itself to us. Dave and I were working together at the time in an office. We had a mutual friend who popped into my office one day and just happened to say, "Oh, I've seen your photos on Facebook," because of course that's where I was sharing them at the time, and Flickr, places like that. And he comes in and he says, "Have you ever thought about doing weddings?" And I was sharp intake of breath, and I was like, "Well, look, Dave and I have spoken about it, but I'm not sure we're quite there yet, and it's quite nervous about it." And he was like, "Well, look, I know someone who's getting married. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know, mate. I mean, who's the person?" And he's like, "Well, actually, it's me, and I'd love you and Dave to shoot the wedding." So I said to him, "Look, this is the situation. We've never shot a wedding before. Talking to the groom is fine, saying, 'Look, we've never shot a wedding before.' They can be, yeah, that's fine, no problem. Speak to your good lady fiance and run it past her first." So he went back, spoke to her. We had a big meeting, and she said to us, "Look, fully appreciate what you're doing. I mean, I've seen your photos. I get the impression that you guys are going to be able to take a half decent photo." I think we did it for like beer money. I don't think we even really paid them. I think they just bought our drinks all night. We did that first wedding. The images, looking back on the images now, I wouldn't say they're awful, but they are a world away from kind of the polished images that I present and that we all present now. Speak to the couple. Do they still love the photos? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, they love them. And they still love them now to this day. So although I look back on them and cringe, it's nice to know that at the time, and still now, the couple that we provided the photos to, I can still look back on them and they still love them. But yeah, ultimately, Dave and I got into wedding photography by accident and for the money, effectively. And so we did that first one for no money at all. And then we just started out charging nothing, like £100, £200. And we did about 10 weddings at that cost. Wow. And then Dave came to me one day and he said, we need to up our prices. And I was always the cautious one in the relationship. And I said to him, well, I'm not sure, mate. It's a lot of money already. I think we were charging people £400 for 2 photographers for an entire day of shooting. At that point, I'm like, we're charging a lot of money. And he said, no, look, and he said something very important. He said, if we keep shooting budget weddings, we are always going to be the budget wedding guys.
That's true.
Yeah. Very true.
And I said, and I couldn't disagree. And I said, all right, okay. So bearing in mind we were charging £400 at the time, and I said, right, what are we going to charge? £1,500. And I was like, whoa, what? Hey, where have you got that number? And he's like, I'm just sticking the flag in the sand. That's it. That's what we're charging. And so we did. And would you believe it? We got double the amount of weddings when we put the price up than we did when we were charging £400. And it comes back to that whole perceived value thing. If people are being charged £400 for a wedding, they're going to think. Some people will think, oh, that's great. That's all I can afford. I'll go for these guys. Others are going to think, I can afford that. I could probably afford a bit more. Do I want to budget that low? And so, and there is that perceived value. So yeah, so we upped the price to £1,500 quid, which is still massively low for two photographers for kind of 10, 12 hours a day. But yeah, so that was it. And I guess my takeaway, or what I would like other people to take away from that, is believe in your skill, believe in your talent.
Yeah.
If you've done a number of weddings, and it can be difficult sometimes to put a value on your own worth. Because, and I won't go in, we've spoken of personally before about the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you start out in photography, you get a camera, you get that first lens, and you think, wow, this is amazing. I'm taking the best images in the world, because you don't know anything effectively. And then you get to that point and the curve starts to come down as you start to learn a little bit more about photography, and you can start to be a bit more self-critical. And then kind of your self-worth kind of dips massively until you get to the point where you do actually start to learn a bit more, and then it comes back up again. And it is difficult when you're starting out in photography to objectively look at your images. But yeah, the takeaway that I would ask people to take away from this is, look at your images, and if you think you're not charging enough, don't be afraid to stick your flag in the sand, as Dave said, and just go for it. And you may well find, as we did, be surprised to find that you end up getting more gigs from it. So don't be afraid to overvalue yourself.
You still need to pay your dues, I think.
Absolutely.
And understand that, you really need to look at your work and look at other photographers' work that are established wedding photographers and say, at least let me approach that, because what you're handing over aren't just pictures. They're somebody's memories. And I know that sounds really trite, but like you said, Peter, do they still love those pictures? Yeah, they do. You know why? It was their wedding day. And by the way, your story reminded me of, there's two very famous wedding photographers, top echelon, Roberto Valenzuela and Jerry Guiones, and I've seen both of them present their first weddings, like showing us the work from their first weddings.
I've seen those as well.
And they're awful. They're terrible.
They're the best photographers out there. They are so good. Yeah.
I remember one of the images that Roberto showed, and I think there was a bride halfway down a set of stairs, and there was like a shadow right across her face, and so her body was lit and her face was completely in the shadow. Yeah, I have seen that one.
Funny enough, like the only two wedding photographers books who I like, the books I own are both those guys. Both the two, So they're just incredible. But going back to what you said, Peter, about the 400 quid, like if I think if I was getting married and I saw somebody for 400, like their price was 400 quid, the first thing I would look at is they must be amateurs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's no professionals would charge that amount of money, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So that would be my first perspective on that. Like, so.
It's funny. It's funny because one of my former second photographers, he told me the story about when he got married. He went to Craigslist, which I don't know if you have that in the UK or Ireland, but basically it's like a cheap want ad, personal ad, whatever, things for sale. Thing in the United States. So he went to Craigslist because his wife at the time, or his fiance at the time, said, go find us a wedding photographer. And he found a guy for $300. And he goes, man, I'm a guy. I'm thinking, oh, this is a great deal. We're going to have a wedding photographer for $300. And the pictures are just so incredibly awful that I said to him, and I actually asked both he and his wife, I said, do you mind if I use those pictures for a blog post? And they laughed and they said, no, go right ahead. So I do have a blog post on my website where you can see these pictures, and it's a lesson in you get what you pay for.
Yeah, over here there was one, there's Groupon. And Groupon, there was photographers on that. And a friend of mine, I was going to, this is when I wasn't a wedding photographer, but I was going to the wedding. And I was like, I can take some photographs for you if you want. And so she goes, my aunt got me these guys on Groupon. And I was like, okay. So I says, I'll tell you what. I said, I can do all the ones, like when they take you off your images and, out after the ceremony, I'll do all the candid shots of all the guests and everything. And maybe I'll pull you aside and I might get one or two of you on your own. And which I did. But I said to him, do me a favor. I says, will you let them know that I'm going to be there in the morning? While she's getting ready. And so I walked in and they had set up, kind of detailed shots. So I says, I'm going to do my own one. So I put the dress, it was like a 4-poster bed, and I put the dress on it and the shoes. And then they kind of came and took the exact same photographs as I did. So every time I was doing something, they were doing the exact same photographs. But I remember when she had just got her makeup on and she walked up to the mirror, and like, yourself, the first thing the bride wants to do is see her makeup and her hair all done. And you want to catch that reaction,
Yeah.
And one of the guys got down so low on the ground and was shooting right up this way. So wasn't getting a reaction. I just says to myself, oh my God, this girl is like a size 8 to 10. She's so slim. She's beautiful. But the angle that he took that, all they're going to see is like chins and nostrils and, so I didn't say anything. The other guy was way back standing on the bed. So I don't know what I know now what he was taking a photograph of, but at the time I didn't. So anyway, so they got married in July. I edited the photographs that I took, gave them to her. She absolutely loved them. Actually, her profile picture is, even though it was years ago, is still a shot that I took. But anyway, yes, that was July. So then it was coming up to Christmas time, and the guys still hadn't given her any proofs, nothing. So I just emailed them, so they said that they were going home. They didn't live in Ireland. They lived somewhere else. I don't want to give too much information, but they said that they'd get back to her after Christmas. So they did. They got back to her after Christmas, and nothing was edited. It was like straight out of camera. Everything was straight out of camera. And they said to her, pick 20 images because that's what you're going to get in your album. So she says, right. So she called me over and she was literally in tears. She was like, they had 1,200 photographs, and she goes, I can't pick one that I like. And I says to her, can I see what they are? So that one in the bedroom, she goes, look at that one. She goes, I look like I'm 6 months pregnant because of the angle that he took it. But the other guy, so it was the mirror she looked into was like a sun. So I had rays going out. So the guy that was well back standing on the bed got a picture. She was like in one of those rays in the tiny corner. She was like so small you could barely see her. But you can see all the bedroom in the background. So they were probably trying to be creative, but they, it didn't work.
I think bringing this back to a positive spin, I think that story brings up two very important learning points for both us as photographers, but also clients, wedding couples. One, if you're starting out, and this one I think is the most important. One, if you're starting out as a wedding photographer, the most important thing you can do is manage expectations.
Yes.
Because nothing will kill a burgeoning wedding photography career faster than a snotty review. And I say a snotty review. It may well be a well-intentioned or a well-deserved review. If you haven't. So again, when Dave and I started out, we told the couple, look, we've never done this before. We want to make you aware of that. We'll obviously do the best we can for you, but just so you're aware. They then had no real expectation of what the images would look like. If you go in all guns blazing, yeah, I'm a fantastic photographer, I can do this, I can do that, and then the images aren't that way, you're going to have a problem. And again, nothing's going to kill a burgeoning wedding photography career faster than that really bad review. And the second point is for anyone listening to this who's getting married, just make sure to do your research. If a lot of new photographers that I see, and again, I'll try and keep this positive, a lot of new photographers that I see where they're posting their images online, a lot of them are coming from styled shoots, which if you're not aware, it's a day where you get a couple of models together, you get a makeup artist, a prop designer, or a set designer, and everything is brought together and everything is done in slow time, and you can pose the couple, they're posing, the models are posing as a wedding couple, and you can get some beautiful images from those. And a lot of photographers starting out think, well, I've got these amazing images, I'll put these on my website. And they do look beautiful, but it's because they've had that time at the styled shoot. They've been able to. It's we've often, the three of us have often likened a real wedding day to doing a portrait shoot at 100 miles an hour for 10 to 12 hours a day.
It's portrait.
There is just no let up.
It's portrait photography. It's product photography. It's photojournalism.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
It's everything.
And,
It's
and
everything.
if I could add that to what you just said, Peter, for somebody who's starting out in wedding photography, because I like, for example, I like to read the subreddit on Reddit, wedding photography, and I see a lot of brides, Cathy, saying the same thing that your friend said, where it's like, it's been 6 months, where are my pictures? Or aren't you supposed to do anything? And the answers that a lot of wedding photographers, experienced ones, give back, and it's the same answer I would, is what does your contract say? So manage the expectations and put them in writing.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to have some special, believe it or not, and I'm saying this as an attorney, you don't have to have special legal language in a contract. You just have to have very plain English, and you say this is, and you can even put in there, you know, client acknowledges that this is my first wedding that I'm shooting as a wedding photographer, you know?
Yeah.
And that
that's
way,
a get out of jail free card right there.
you know, I mean, but put it in writing, or even if you don't have if not necessarily a formal contract, send an email or a letter that says, okay, you and I met and we agree that this is what I'm going to be doing for you on your wedding day. And that way everybody knows we're all on the same song sheet. And if something happens, which something will, you know, then you've got, you at least know, okay, we've got that covered. One other thing I'd like to add too, Peter, when you said, don't go in and, you know, present yourself as I'm the world's greatest wedding photographer. Let me tell you a story. Somebody on Facebook, in one of the Facebook groups, a photographer starting off in weddings, she put out something and she asked, well, has anybody ever shot at the Foundry? Okay, Foundry is a venue here in Knoxville. And guess what it used to be? A forge, a foundry. I know, right?
Funny that.
And the question the person has was, is it dark in there? Well, yes, there's no windows because foundries didn't have windows. So I said, I shot there. And the person said, well, does this mean, you know, I'm really not good with flash and I don't have the equipment. And I said, well, when's the wedding? Well, the wedding was some 9 months off. Okay. I was like, well, for about, I don't know, $300, go get a basic flash setup and learn. Yep. You know, if you're gonna make a promise like that, you know, it's okay if you don't know necessarily how you're gonna do it today, as long as you very clearly make sure you know how to do it the day of the wedding. I mean, you know, so if you're a beginner and it's a wedding situation where you think, oh, I might need to know a little bit more about off-camera flash, and you have the time, learn it.
Yeah.
Because eventually you will need to know that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, that's where I was getting back to that guy. So that's what I'm saying. When you see deals like that, just be careful, because those two guys were obviously learning, but that girl didn't know that. So she didn't check out the website. And when she thought she was getting a wedding album, it was what she describes as the Beano. So it was literally one of those, obviously it's another one you get on group, you know, just soft pages. It was like a magazine. So it wasn't an actual album. So like she didn't get what she thought she was getting basically at the end of the day. So we're kind of running out of time. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, so two tips take away. As a photographer, manage expectations, and as a wedding couple, make sure to read the contract, get a contract, read the contract, and also make sure the images that are displayed will be the same type of images that you're going to get. But yes, we are running out of time.
Yeah, so
and we don't want to waste any more
quick
of our
tip from you
readers'
as well,
time.
Peter.
Quick tip. Go on, Cathy, you go first. What's your tip?
So if you're shooting a wedding, we will come to, I think we're going to do a podcast on this for, I think, further down the line, on things that can happen at weddings and things that can go wrong. But always have a second camera, spare flash, spare batteries, spare cards, because you never know when one of them is going to go or one of them is going to break or not work. So always have spares. So that's my tip. So Peter?
To the point where now I think all three of us shoot with two cameras anyway, with different lenses on them. I have a third camera that I take with me just in case one of those cameras
I have a
goes
third
down
as well.
So,
I always have three.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't, you know, trying to keep it budget as possible, you don't have to start out that way, but just make sure that you do have some kind of secondary means to shoot an image if your camera suddenly fails on the day. My tip, and I think this is probably one of the most important things when it comes to wedding photography, because without this, you are not getting decent photos at all. And that is, be comfortable. Wear something comfortable to the wedding. Dave and I started out, and we'd be there in suits and three-piece suits and stiff shoes, and you're bending down, you're kneeling, you're up, and by the end of it, you feel like you've gone 12 rounds with Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
I now shoot weddings, Cathy, you well know. I shoot weddings in either a pair of jeans or a pair of soft chinos, my most comfortable boots that I've ever worn, a nice, smart linen shirt, but just something that moves easily.
And comfortable,
something you can move, exactly, something you can move around easily, and something that's going to be comfortable. Because, as I say, if you are uncomfortable, if you get down on the floor 5 times and it's a pain to get back up again, the next time you see an image and think, that will be good from down on the floor if I'm knelt down, you probably won't get it, because you'll just think, I can't be bothered getting back up again.
Yeah.
So it will 100% affect your images.
Yeah. It's like,
so wear something comfortable.
Yeah, it's like myself and Stephanie. I don't know about you, but you have to get the granny panties on. So basically, the bigger
I might buy myself a pair.
The bigger the knickers, the better.
And the funny thing is, this June, Cathy and I are shooting a wedding together in Florida.
Oh, God.
In June.
Miami.
It's going to be hot. So now I'm going to be the entire wedding staring at her butt thinking, she got those panties on?
She got granny pants.
Oh, yeah,
on.
they're coming with me for sure. Because I tell you what, when you bend over, then you have to stand up, and then, there's nothing,
Too much information. Stephanie, what's your tip?
Well, actually, I think my tip might have been said by Cathy. The whole
the
plan for success. No. Plan for success by anticipating failure. But actually, I'm gonna sort of riff off of what Peter said. And here's something. It's good. Make sure it's in your contract. But even when it is, eat something. Hydrate.
Yes.
Because a lot of times for a wedding, you're getting there as the bride's getting ready. Maybe it's about 11 in the morning, noon, and you may not get anything to eat until 7 o'clock at night because it's go. So even if your contract says the bride has to provide you with a meal, don't anticipate that it's going to come anytime soon. Bring some candy bars. Make sure there's snacks.
High sugar, high protein.
Bananas, isn't that right,
lots
Peter?
of carbs.
And when you have the
opportunity.
And when you have the opportunity to drink something, and by drinking I mean water, iced tea, whatever it might be, grab it. Because you don't realize how quickly you're dehydrating when you're running around like that. Because you're going to be on your feet about 10 hours, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good tip, all right. So anyway, I suppose we can finish up now. So basically, you can find us on all our social media on the Epic Photography Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And it's the epicphotographypodcast.com on the website. So Peter is at Peter. Where they find you? Instagram, TikTok.
I am. Instagram is Peter Treadway Photography or Peter Treadway Photo.
Stephanie.
On Instagram, I am Stephanie Richer Photo, and Richer is as in for richer or for poorer, not Richard. Richer, richest.
Yeah, and I am Cathy_Weatherston_photography on Instagram for landscapes, but for weddings and newborns, I am Dublin_weddings_newborns. And Cathy Baitson on Twitter and Cathy Weatherston Photography on Facebook. So anyway, thank you, dear
she's
readers.
still having that
which Peter
personality
still
split.
hasn't.
She is.
No, we've run out of time again. We've run out of time again
God,
for me
Peter,
to explain it.
I don't
Next
know.
time.
We have to get this. Next time we're going to get this. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us on this week's Epic Photography Podcast, brought to you by our epic sponsor, Platypod, the world's most compact tripod base. Now, that's my first time for saying that, so hopefully I'll roll off my tongue a lot quicker.
Have a Guinness, Cathy. Have a Guinness.
That's it.
Oh, and actually, if I'll just say, if any of our readers are reading this podcast at the moment and they haven't yet seen episode 4 with Scott, Kelby, and Dave talking of Platypod, go and listen to it now, because the new Platypod Extreme came out the other day, and it is an amazing piece of kit. So yeah, go and check out the podcast. Go and check out Platypod, because it is a fantastic upgrade to the previous Platypod offerings.
So anyway, it's bye from us. Slán.
Lovely talking to you both.
Same here.
Tuning in.
Bye.
We'll see you all again next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.